Fantastic lakes all over the south, and these are some of our better southern fishing lakes. You've got to look for in timber the same thing that you look for as you're fishing weedbeds. You look for the thicker clumps of timber, number one, and number two, you look for the logs or the trees that are broken and are laying at an angle either above the water or in the water. This tends to be your better targets. Naturally, it helps to know what's underneath the surface also. The ideal condition I think is more related to me to temperature than the type of water you're fishing. I prefer water but 55, mid-50s or above. The water can't get too hot for a buzzbait. Where it really seems to hurt the buzzbait is when it drops in the low 50s, and then they don't want to tend to break the surface for it. Bass feed a lot on the surface, and this bait will definitely get their attention if they're interested, and they'll move to the bait, and the noise and the disturbance on the surface will actually many times aggravate them into hitting even when they're not hungry. I've never seen anything like it in life except maybe a duck paddling across the water, and he'd have to be going pretty fast, or a big coot, but then that'd get on the big side. Now, I'm not sure it looks like much of anything to them except that it's a surface disturbance. How do you work the lure through the water? Is there a certain way you should work a buzzbait? I think all of us, it's kind of a personal preference thing, and I'll tell you my preference on working buzzbaits is to work it as slow as you can possibly work it and yet keep it on top. A lot of guys like to reel it fast. I rarely ever reel one fast. I just barely keep it on top, keep the rod high, and hear it just plop, 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 plop. I fish targets. I don't fish all the way to the boat with it. And so you'll see me reeling it fast at times, but that's only to get it back to the boat and make another cast. When I'm actually working it around the log, around the stump, that's when I'm going to slow it down with this plop, 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 plop noise. Another thing about working a buzzbait, I think I'd like to point out right here, is that a lot of times people that are unfamiliar with it and use a buzzbait for the first time will tie it on and throw it out there, and it will actually run off the right or off the left. A lot of people kind of complain about this, and they come back and bend the wire and try to straighten it out and to get it to run straight. Well, I actually like for mine to run torque left or right, and say if I got a log laying out there, I'll throw past the log, and I actually let it start running. Even if you miss the log by 1 or 2 foot, you threw past it, the bait will run right into the log. So actually what you're doing, you're covering about 2/3 of that stump or log with one cast. Boy, that's when the strike's going to occur. It's running right in there, right into that bass's house. A great percentage of the fish that hit it will be 4-pound plus fish. Yeah, they'll hit it in 2 different ways. They'll suck the bait like any top water, and then a lot of times they'll just slash through the bait, just explode. Body, head, everything, tail comes out of the water and they land on top of the bait. So it's a very exciting lure to fish. Looked like one right there. Something. Let's try it. Just what I'm talking about on him. Oh, there. I think he's behind the stump, though. There he is, come loose. Oh, yeah, that's a pretty good one. Hey. Come here, buddy. These buzzbaits really are exciting. I think if you just try some of the techniques we've tried to show you here today, not only will you find it's a very productive way to fish, but it's a very fun way to fish.
When fishing buzzbaits, remember that bass will feed actively on the surface, and even when they're not, you can sometimes aggravate them into striking by repeatedly casting a buzzbait into their territory. Conditions for using buzzbaits are dictated mainly by water temperature over 55 degrees and depth 15 feet or less. You know, most bodies of water across the country have acres of weed-choked shallow flats. They're made up of lily pads, coontail, moss beds grown right to the surface. They exist in the backwaters of most of our rivers, in our ponds, lakes, and reservoirs. Early in the season, many anglers come in and fish them successfully for largemouth bass. But come summertime, they avoid them like the plague. The weed growth is so heavy, they stay out of it. Now, if you're one of these anglers, you're missing a lot of sport because some of the finest bass fishing near you can be right there in the heaviest cover you can find. One way is to fish the surface. And so now Al Linder's going to show you a couple of tricks to get right in this stuff and catch big bass, even right in the middle of summer.
Incidentally, your best time to come in and fish these shallow water bays like this is your first couple hours in the morning, your last couple hours in the evening, or on nice, calm, overcast days. The key thing to remember here is always stay on a calm side. Don't go into a bay that the wind is blowing into because you're going to have problems. The fish will not be active. You want to stay on the lee side of the lake. Super important thing to remember in shallow water bass fishing in cover like this. We're going to start to work this clump of pads right here. But before we do, let's take a look at some of the equipment we're going to be using. My two favorite shallow water lures to start with. First, let's go over the old standby, the spoon. This bait has proven the test of time as far as catching bass. It's been around longer than most lures that we see in today's markets. I dress them with a rubber skirt like this, or a twister tail, or a piece of pork rind, anything that serves as an attractor. Here's another good shallow water bait. This is a surface type bait. You can see it's got a propeller-like spinner on the front, and it kind of churns across and gurgles like a little motorboat going across the top of the water. It's got a flat spoon here, so you can retrieve slower and keep the bait on top for those short strikers. I use a trailer hook on the back. This is an important part in fishing heavy cover. You get so many fish that are just missed. This trailer hook will increase your catch ratio quite a bit. These two baits are fished generally relatively fast over the top of this stuff. Anybody that fishes this type of cover with these baits know that at least 50 to 60% of your strikes are missed fish. That's why I call them fish. This lure here, I call my fish catcher. What I do with it, I take the spoon or the little bite and work real fast to bring a fish up out of the cover. As soon as I get a short strike or a miss, I reel right in right away and throw this right exactly where that boil was, and believe me, your catch ratio will increase by 50 to 60%. It's amazing. It's the way to get shallow water fish. When you're talking about equipment for fishing heavy cover like this, there's only one word for it, heavy. This is no place for a light action rod enthusiast. What we're talking about is a heavy action rod like this, at a minimum 17-pound test line and a good sturdy free spool reel. You don't fight a fish in this kind of cover, you have to horse them out. And that's the name of the game. We use two rods, one to find fish the majority of the time for the short strikers, and this rod right at your side, ready to throw in on any fish that boils at the spoon and misses. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. When you work these flats like this, don't be afraid to throw way up inside the pads. When you come into little pockets or at the end of it, always drop the spoon. I missed that fish. That's what I was talking about earlier. A lot of times you get short strikers like that. You got to get that frog right in there right after that. You got 5, 6 seconds to play before he'll nail it again. There he is. That's why you got heavy equipment. He's fighting dang good. Oh, come on out of there. Oh. A typical pad bass. Come here, come here. All right. That's what I'm talking about by the size and types of bass that live up inside this heavy cover great deals at a time. 3, 4, 5-pound bass are far from exceptions. In many cases, you got 7 and 8s in here in good numbers. This frog, incidentally, it might look like it's hard, but it's a real soft, spongy rubber. When these fish hit it inside this stuff, they hang on to it almost like they do a plastic worm. It's real soft. It's almost alive. Put this one away and let's see if we can go get another one. Here's a little trick to remember when you're spoon fishing. There's a lot of days, particularly bright sunny days like this, where a flashy silver spoon like this will turn fish off. They won't come up and hit it. Where they will come up and hit a dull finish like this black finish. Most of the spoons that I buy are all finished in silver, and I carry with me different color measures. All you do, If you're not getting any action or it seems slow, do yourself a little coloring process on the spoon. Take the magic marker, knock all of that flash off it. Nothing to it. You can get any kind of haze or finish that you want on it. A goldish or brown with a yellow magic marker, a blue magic marker. It's amazing at what you can do to get different color contrast. Some days it can make a heck of a difference. Okay, let's see if this colored spoon does make that much difference. Didn't get nothing throwing a lighter silver spoons. Ooh, boy, that thing is just skipping across them pads. You almost dance that spoon when you get in one of those pockets, or every time you come to the end of a clump, just kind of dance it around a little bit. It just gives it a little added type of action. Just hold your rod tip just like this. Just shake it, and that spoon is just almost darts in place when you come out of them. There's one, right on the edge. Come on, baby. It's running right at me. Get out of that junk. This one we'll put back. A feisty little dude. Go on, little fella. To highlight the things you should remember, first couple hours in the morning, first couple hours in the evening, or preferably calm days. Try to stay out of the windy part. Stay with heavy equipment. Remember, you're not going to get in here with light equipment and get any kind of fish out of here. Give these methods a fair try on your lakes. Good luck and good fishing.
Now let's check out a different way to fish plastic worms by making them float. Glenn Lau is going to demonstrate this special technique for us along with Ricky Klein.
Okay, slip that right through there, Rick. So until it comes out the other side. And on this one, we're going to put a black worm. And what you do, you slide that right up in like this. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then slide it so it comes right on around. And you get it so it slides all the way up to the head now. Now this head is cork, and you can see it works rather nicely.
We'll be fishing with Glenn Lau. He's probably most known for his television production and his unbelievable underwater photography. I don't think as many know that he's probably one of the finest fishermen in the country also. And he's going to be fishing, as you can tell, we'll be fishing with a worm. But I don't think it's like any worm you've ever seen before. It's definitely not like any I've ever seen. Most of us associate fishing worm on the bottom. This is a floating worm, but he actually is going to fish on the top.
Okay, let me show this to you again here, Rick. I like to use a bobber. It's a regular brim bobber, and you can see we have 3 colors here. And the plain color one is the one that we use when we have clear weather like this and the sun shining. But when there's overcast, you need these bright colors to be able to see that lure, because a lot of time a bass will come up and it'll suck it down in, and it'll just disappear, and you wonder where it is, and it's really in a fish's mouth, and by that time it's back out. Okay, now we'll cut this tip off here about, anywhere from 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch down. Let's do that right now. Then I like to use a wire hook, you can see it here, and push it up through that cork so it comes out the other side. Now that's the part that stays ahead of the worm. Now we're going to take a white worm for you and put it right up through, here you can see. So it goes on there about an inch, inch and a half on that hook. Now the idea is to get a worm that's straight back. Now see what you have here? A nice worm. This worm has air mixed into it, so it's a floating worm. And this head is designed to keep that hook floating. So what you're going to see coming through the water is a worm that sets about halfway out of the water and half in the water. We're going to start right up here along the weeds and start fishing along the bank there. And the reason that it's going to be so good is because all those snakes that are in this area that come crawling out. And of course, a lot of people don't know that bass like snakes, but they sure do. So let's go right up here and start. Okay. So I'll move up here. I'll put these polarized glasses on because a lot of times you can see those fish.
This water's awful clear.
Yeah. Okay, now what we're going to do, Rick, is move right up along the shoreline here. Let me start running this motor. Slow that down a little. We'll work over here. And the idea is to cast the lure in as close to the bank as you can. And the most important part is, really the most important part, and it's the hardest thing for people to comprehend, when you cast that thing in, let it set for at least 15 seconds, or the count of 15, or however you do it. That's so important, because a bass will spook a lot of times when that lure hits the water. You know, he's surprised by it. Then he gets curious, and then if you wait that long, you got his curiosity up. Cast it in, let it set about 15 seconds, and then just twitch it a little bit. And you just so it vibrates. And 9 times out of 10, that's when they'll hit it. If that doesn't work, then start giving it just little twitches as you move it, little twitches. That worm will walk back and forth, back and forth. That's important for most people to have light line. If you're in a place with real big fish, you may need heavier line, but if you're catching pound, 2 pound, 3 pound bass, I would say 6 pound test line, any kind of tackle. It doesn't matter if it's casting, light spinning, or spin cast, push button type reels, that'll work. So you don't have to have any sophisticated kind of equipment. Okay, let's give it a try. Right as close as you can now, and I got to reemphasize, let it sit there.
I know 15 seconds doesn't sound long, but I've fished enough to know that that's almost an eternity when you're waiting on a lure, waiting to move it.
I'll tell you, we're going to catch them. We're going to catch them. You ever have that feeling when you move into a place?
I tell you, confidence is a big part of it. Got to believe you're going to catch them.
Main thing is when you cast in.
I was just fishing an area that I was...
Oh! You see that? Woo! Come on, come on. Oh, I love to see him jump. Come on. All right, come on. Oh, did you see? Isn't that fun? Well, there's nothing prettier than the jump. Largemouth bass, I'll tell you, they're good eating, but the main thing I like is when they hit, oh, beautiful, beautiful.
What are you using, 4 or 6? You said 6 or 4?
Yeah, it feels more like 4. I thought I had 6 on here, but gotta take it easy.
There we go. Oh, come on.
Oh, oh.
Well, I look like a real rank amateur then.
That's good. Oh, boy. That's beautiful.
Nice fish. There you go.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Got my thumb there.
Yeah,
Sharp
like
little
that.
hook.
I'm gonna keep that, baby. Let's put him right back here in the tank.
All right, here, I'll give him. Go ahead.
All right. And get right back in there. All right, Rick. Cast right up there. Boy, look at that.
What size worm? Do you normally use this little 6-inch worm?
Yeah, I like that because it goes back and forth.
You use that bigger worm anytime?
Well,
Oh, man, he come up there on that thing strong.
what is it? I bet that's a garfish. There's some garfish. Huh? Oh, no,
I don't catch garfish.
It's a bass. It's a bass. Some jump. Come on. Jump. Watch it.
These fish have almost the coloring of a...
Come on, jump. Oh. Isn't that pretty? Yeah. It's got that watermelon color to it.
a real light color. In this clear water, I would think they'd be darker than that.
Yeah. Weighs about 1.5 pounds.
Yeah.
Look how fat he is.
You want to put that one in your pond?
You've been eating snakes. That's what he's been.
What do you mean? White snakes with red dots.
Let me get back up here. Yeah, keep him, right?
They seem to be holding in those little pockets.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, once they start hitting, Rick, cast right.
Hey, wait,
You got one?
Yeah. Come on.
Look at him jump. Let me get that net. Oh, I love to watch him jump. Love to watch him jump. Isn't that nice? Ah, boy. That's good. 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 There you are.
Stick this one in your pond?
Yeah, keep him.
A little...
Stock my pond.
I'm building me one.
Get
of those
right back
ponds
in there.
Too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Everybody's building a bass pond these days.
Hey, you learn a lot from them, I think. Yeah, I know you have. I've talked to you enough to know it's a tremendous place to watch and study fish. Hey, Glenn, look, there's one of the real ones right there.
Huh?
See that snake? See him?
Where?
He just crawled out in the water. See, there he is right there. Oh, hey.
You got one?
Yeah. Dang. He almost slipped by me.
You say you saw a snake up here?
Yeah, I was looking at him when he hit. Uh-oh, that's a good fish.
Oh,
Come out
of that motor. Ooh, gee. Is he in the motor?
No, I think he stayed there.
Oh, good. Ooh. Oh, that's the biggest one so far.
Okay.
Boy. Where's the net? Come on, that light line. Watch that light line. Get him up. Let him jump. Come on. Oh, nice.
There we go.
Look at that.
Oh, that's fun.
Beautiful.
Whew.
Beautiful. Let's go back at it.
I never caught.
Here, you take
Hey.
that fish.
You don't want to. Let me have your rod and you take him off. Glenn, do you have any color preferences on these worms?
Well, I don't know. I just like to keep changing them around until I find something that works.
Just keep excited about what you're throwing, huh?
Yeah. Ooh, there's a hit. Did you see that swirl?
Think he'll come back? Oh, hey, there he is.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Light line. Boy, get down those weeds. That's
See the
one
good
thing
fish
bad about
are
light line. Oh, jeez.
Well, that's pretty. Real.
What? Let him jump. Let him. Oh, I love to watch him jump.
You
Isn't
just
that
tell me
pretty?
when you're ready.
Come on. Look at. Oh, isn't that something?
I think that's your
Isn't that
favorite part of
beautiful?
fishing, isn't it, Glenn?
Isn't that beautiful? Look at him. Look at him. Boy, he is full of it, isn't he? Boy, that's a lot of fun.
Whew. Glenn, we got about an hour left fishing. I think we'll just try to wind this thing up and then we can fish on the dark. And why don't you tell us again how you fish this, when we should fish it? Just kind of summarize for us.
Okay, well, if you'll take one close look at this, what we want to do is show this to the people. That's a worm, a floating worm about 6 inches long. It has a cork that is on the head of it, a very light hook, and that's all you need. And that's a dynamite bait. Really, really good. Any place that you have critters that crawl off the banks into the water, like snakes or salamanders or whatever they might be. You say we can keep fishing?
I'm gonna fish the dark if you are.
Okay, well, let's have the cameras follow us around then. We might get a few more fish. Boy,
It's starting to get too good to quit now.
Whew. Boy, that is something. Ooh, it's a big. Woo-hoo! Oh, come on. Oh, look at the size of that rascal. Oh, boy. Isn't that pretty?
That's beautiful.
Oh, isn't
You
that
want me to
pretty?
net him
Let
for
me
you?
get, no, I'll get him. Look at the size of that. Oh, come on. Oh, boy. Every day's a holiday and the skies are baby blue, and anybody don't like this life is crazy. There we are. What, that's about 6 pounds?
Okay, let's summarize. Here are the main points to keep in mind when fishing topwater. The water temperature should be from 55 to 80 degrees, with temperature in the 70s considered best. Most fish will come from water less than 15 feet deep. In the summer, fish early and late in the day. Preferably calm water and overcast days. And most importantly, patience is a great virtue in surface fishing. With the exception of buzz baits, don't be afraid to let that lure sit there for several seconds before twitching it. As a matter of fact, work it so slow you can almost feel your hair growing. Now, if you can be patient, you'll be a successful fisherman. Well, good luck and good fishing here.
The presentation you have just seen is one of several available from Glenlau Films Video. The address, 3211 Southwest 27th Avenue, Ocala, Florida.
still remember the first big bass that I caught. It wasn't big enough to be a trophy, but it was a good example of what makes bass fishing so exciting. Like most fishermen, I found the shorelines were easiest to fish, but all too often, my success was erratic. The bass just weren't biting, or I was fishing fishless waters. In fact, fishermen are more shoreline conscious than the bass themselves. And while bass undeniably require cover, the cover that fishermen can see is only a fraction of the cover that's available. Bass live in a world that fishermen seldom see. However, today's bass fisherman has the tools to look into that world. It's common knowledge that 10% of the fishermen catch 90% of the bass. Our goal in this tape is to help you join that 10% club. We'll show you how to find and fish some of the more common structure like points and timber. And you'll learn how to find and catch bass on structure that most fishermen overlook, places away from shore where bass spend most of their time. And that's just part of what structure fishing for bass is all about.
I'm Charlie Farmer. As a writer and a fisherman, I fished with some of the top professional bass fishermen in the country, and I've covered the most prestigious bass fishing tournaments as well. As a writer, I have to keep abreast of what's going on in bass fishing and keep attuned to what's going on with the bass. But like you, I love to bass fish, and I do so as often as I can. To consistently catch bass, and I mean big bass, knowledge is the key to success. I've had the good fortune of working with fisheries biologists, and I've learned a lot about bass from biologists like Harold Kearns.
A common mistake by many bass fishermen is they overcomplicate the bass. Now, the weather conditions can be very complicating, and even finding the structure the bass is located on can be complicating. But the bass is generally spending time either spawning or feeding or in a safe area in the deeper water, usually.
Harold, I know that bass spend a lot of time in deep water, but from a biologist's point of view, just how much time do they spend in the deeper water?
On an annual basis, these bass spend at least 50% of their time on this deep water structure. And in the summertime, when most of the fishermen are fishing for these fish, they're probably spending 75% or greater of their time on this deep structure.
As a fisherman, I'm familiar with a structure that holds bass. But how do you define structure?
We define structure just as a fisherman does. Any irregularity in the floor of the lake, such as standing timber, a point, a submerged island, or hump. The problem isn't finding structure, but it's finding the structure that will hold bass. The best structure to find is an area that has deep structure and shallow water and a path between that's safe and secure. The fish will go ahead and linger on this area and actively feed between the two areas. A lot of fishermen refer to this as a migration route.
In most lakes, the best places to fish are points, submerged islands, creek and river channels, standing timber, cliffs and bluffs, man-made structures, and the bass's deep water home, the sanctuaries. Most professional bass fishermen prefer to begin their structure fishing efforts on points, and so do I, because points often provide all three elements of the bass's needs: a deep water sanctuary off the end of the point, shallow water for feeding and spawning at the other end, and an excellent highway between the two.
You know, points are regularly recurring features that are found in most lakes. And to successfully fish the points, we have to incorporate all the tools and the techniques that the modern bass fisherman has available to him.
My purpose is to eliminate the water that doesn't hold bass. And to do that, I'll use the tools and techniques that will effectively cover the most area in the least amount of time.
You know, a point has a lot of subtle features that hide the bass. We may not know they're there, and to eliminate a lot of the water, a crankbait is the best lure to use. And the reason for this is we can fish it quickly, it goes down deep, and we can cover an awful lot of water very efficiently. One of my favorite techniques is called fan casting, where I use a semicircle and I cast about 3 times in each direction. I cover that water, and if there's a bass down there, I'm going to get him.
First, I'll cast straight out, and I'll make a couple of casts here right here, right in front of me. Then I'll move over to the other side, make a cast here, here, and here, a good fan cast pattern. I'll then take the trolling motor and move to one side of the point. Actually, I'm casting right over the point, a nice semicircle fan cast, about 6 points here, here. One of the important things to do is I want to cover all that water, 6 nice evenly spaced casts. Another important thing to do is try to stay in that calm water and cast to the choppy water, especially if that water has a current. Those fish will be facing into the current. Boy, I'll tell you, he's really using his body. It's a good fish. He's a darn good fish. I'll tell you, he's just stopping me right in my tracks here. Look at the markings on that fish. Boy, he is really pretty. I want to make sure Oh, that is a pretty fish. I had a feeling when he hugged the bottom that was a smallmouth, and I'll tell you, that's one of the advantages of fishing deep structure. You not only get some good largemouth, but you also have a chance of picking up some beautiful, good-looking smallmouth like this one right here.
Catching a bass with crankbaits, or with any bait for that matter, is much more than systematic casting. Largemouth bass, like all predators, instinctively identify vulnerable prey. A well-tuned lure will present a tight side-to-side quiver, not an exaggerated wobble. The best crankbaits incorporate this carefully calculated imperfection, like this one. There'll be times when you're fishing that you'll damage your crankbait, such as this one. It will no longer run true. The depth and the action will be inhibited because of this. So you just adjust the eye slightly and it'll correct the tuning of the lure. Oftentimes several adjustments are necessary to achieve just the right action.
Crankbaits are designed to run shallow with a short bill or deep with a longer bill.
In a highland lake like this one, with bottom slopes that change rapidly, select a deep-running crankbait. The angle of the rod tip in relation to the water, I can adjust the depth of this crankbait. I'm running here about 4 feet. The rod tip's up fairly high. Now I can get it down closer to the water, runs about 12 feet deep. And if you want to bump the bottom with a crankbait, you can kneel down and stick that rod tip down in the water. In addition to the proper tuning and rod angle, the knot, the diameter of the line, and the speed of retrieve are other elements of lure control. Take advantage of the information provided by the manufacturer. Even a well-tuned lure will not run properly if the wrong knot is used. Rather than use knots that snug up to the eye, like the clinch knot, use an open loop knot like the Brubaker, because it allows a free swinging motion between the line and the lure.
The Brubaker loop knot combines 2 well-known knots, the simple overhand and the popular improved clinch knot. Start by tying the overhand knot some 4 to 6 inches above the end of your line, running the tag end through the eye and then through the loop formed by the untightened overhand knot. The eye loop should represent the final loop you wish to leave. Hold the loose knot in the line at this point so the loop size doesn't change. Make 5 turns of the tag end around the standing line and bring the end back through the loop of the overhand knot. Remember to make those 5 turns because this guarantees the strength of the knot. After you've taken the tag end back up under the bend, pull both the end and the standing line simultaneously, being careful to maintain the desired eye loop size. When you feel that the overhand knot has tightened completely, keep the standing line taut while you continue to pull on the tag end. Pull down into a neat barrel with the coils gathered neatly.
Line diameter is critical to depth control and lure action. A line over 12 pounds has a lot of resistance in the water. Consequently, the lure doesn't dive as deep as you want. Use the lightest line practical. About 6 to 8 pounds is best. Of course, you control the speed of the lure, but it's the water temperature that determines how fast or how slow you retrieve it. Bass are cold-blooded. Their body temperature is the same as the water. Their feeding habits and their willingness to strike a lure are directly affected by the water temperature. Through the colder months and up until the spawn, when the water reaches about 60 degrees, you'll usually have the best success with a slower retrieve. After the fish has spawned, a faster retrieve is usually your best bet. A reel with a high-speed gear ratio will give you a faster retrieve with less effort, and it's easier to use. Whether you're retrieving the lure fast or slow, don't rely totally on a steady retrieve. Stop the lure on occasion or jerk it, like this. Experiment a little bit. Remember, crank that lure down. You may have to crank it down fast to get it down deep, and then...
Oh, there he is. Ooh, boy, there he is. He's a good one, too.
This bass was in about 12 feet of water, about as deep as this crankbait will run. That's not really that deep for bass. He has numerous senses that help him detect what's going on in his world, but the single most important one is his vision. And sunlight penetration determines where he must be to use his vision to the greatest advantage.
Most bass fishermen think that bright light hurts the bass's eyes, but in the springtime when they're spawning and you see one on a nest in 3 foot of water on a bright day, you kind of question that theory. But new evidence has come to light saying that bass in the deeper, dimly lit water seem to have an advantage over the prey species. They can see them from a greater distance, thus react to the prey and capture this prey, whereas in the shallow water, the bright water, it's just the opposite. These prey species see this bass from a greater distances, thus can react and avoid being eaten by this bass in the shallow, bright, clear water.
So the old basic rule of the bass being in the shallows on cloudy days at dawn and dusk, and the bass being in deeper water when the sun is shining, it still applies, but it's based mainly on the predator-prey relationship.
Yes, from the evidence that has come to light, it seems that the bass is a very effective predator in the deeper water in comparison to his ability in the shallower water to capture prey.
But the fishermen who don't feel that they can catch bass in deeper water are really missing a lot of opportunities. When crankbaits no longer reach the bottom, it's time to choose lures that are weighted. Plastic worms and jig and pork combinations give you more control in deeper water. Remember that the lure should stay in contact with the bottom. A lure that is too light will actually drift aimlessly, and you won't have very much control with that lure, and you definitely will not feel the fish hit. In 15 feet of water or less, I prefer a 3/8 ounce lure. Now, in deeper water, I like to use a 1/2 ounce or larger. Lure weight is very important because feeling the lure is essential to structure fishing in deeper water. Rod construction should match the technique. Medium heavy or heavy action rods are best, and super sensitive materials like graphite or boron keeps close contact with the lure, the bottom, and the fish. Position the boat at the end of the point where it drops off and cast toward the shore along the migration route and over the drop-off. Now, the best way to fish these weighted lures is with a pump and drop method. You lift the rod tip up, you pump, let the rod tip down. Up slowly and down. The bass usually hits this lure as it's going down, and it's the fluttering action of the lure that makes it look the most vulnerable. There's some common mistakes when using plastic baits such as these, and the first one is choosing a line that's really too light. Too much stretch in this line, so we want to make sure we have at least 12-pound test line. Remember to keep that rod at eye level when you're fishing it. If it's too high, you'll have to drop the rod. You may be too late to set that hook. And remember to set the hook at a first indication of the strike. These baits are designed to be fished very slowly. You may just feel that tap, tap, and when you do, set it hard and reel in. It's an economy movement, and it keeps the fish on, keeps his head turned away from heavy cover, and you'll land him. Structure alone does not hold bass, nor do all points. The bottom features blend together to form a migration path. Most professional bass fishermen understand this secret and apply it to their everyday fishing. Once this aspect of bass behavior is understood, you can determine the areas that best meet the bass's needs for shelter, migration, food, and reproduction. By using topographic maps and electronic fishing aids, fishermen can pinpoint these areas faster than they could ever pinpoint them before. First of all, find the deep water. This will depend on what your lake affords. If the deepest hole is 25 feet deep, that's the deep water you're looking for. About 40 feet will be the average depth that you want to find. Greater depths will normally be used except in winter and after cold fronts have passed. In a deep lake, a ledge at the proper depth will be used by bass. Second, you're looking for a pathway from the deep water to shallow water, and this pathway must extend all the way from both. This is why points or bars often hold bass. These tongues of land create a relatively flat route that ends with a ledge or drop-off right at the edge of the deeper water. On a topo map, this is where the contour lines are closer together. These drop-offs are called a contact point because this is where bass will linger on the way into or out of the deep water sanctuary. Third, the migration route itself will be marked with an occasional structure for the bass to find cover on. This is why areas with loose rock, standing timber, or stumps are excellent for bass fishing. The better contour maps will show timbered areas. A bass migration will begin at one end of these contact points, continue along the migration route until the school of bass reaches some point in shallow water where they disperse. This is called a scatter point. These movements to and from shallow water may take a half hour or several hours, and they occur most often at dawn and at dusk. But migrations also occur at infrequent times, dictated by the peculiarities of the weather and other conditions. In a large lake, some schools of bass will be migrating when others aren't. To you and I, the fishermen, this means that at any time of the day, somewhere on the lake, fish are moving and can be caught. Within this area, that includes a sanctuary, migration route, and shallow water, bass can live their entire lives.
Scientists have determined that bass use a narrowly defined home area. We term that as a home range. This area typically encompasses a deep water sanctuary and a migration route, maybe more than one, to shallow water near the shore, or could be in deeper water, just a hump out in the deeper water.
Harold, you defined the home area of a bass, but exactly what kind of size are we talking about here?
Well, like a lot of things in nature, we can't pinpoint an exact size for all bass. It can vary anywhere from 100 yards to maybe a quarter mile in area. It's going to vary quite a bit in terms of the season, plus the size of the fish. The smaller bass, chances are, will have a larger home range until it establishes certain structure patterns within this area.
I know it varies according to different lakes, but the depth of the home ranges, is there a general average depth we're talking about here?
I would assume that the bass won't go deeper than 60 or 70 feet, and that would probably be toward the end of the scale there. It's much shallower typically.
Potential home areas can be selected from topo maps, but actually locating home areas is most precisely done with electronic depth finders or chart recorders. In fact, most structure fishermen find them to be indispensable tools, but these tools are only helpful if you understand the nature of bass and how to interpret and use that information. Depth finders are an excellent navigational aid, and if you set the sensitivity properly, you can learn a lot about the lake floor beneath the boat while you're moving from place to place. But depth finders are especially useful for seeing the intimate details of an area that really is not shown on the maps. A depth sounder with a smaller scale shows more detail. Adjust the sensitivity of the unit until the bottom signal is clear and there's only a minor intermittent echo below it. You can detect minor changes in the bottom of less than a foot,
and you can even determine what the bottom is made of. A solid surface below will return a wide, bright signal. A soft surface, on the other hand, will show a narrow signal. And the signal in between, well, that could very well indicate a fish, and this is what you'll be looking for. It may only be a branch or some other structure, but these features, that's what you're searching for. One of the most common uses for a depth sounder is for parallel fishing and following the break line. By using the depth sounder properly, you can fish the lure consistently and at the same depth and over the most productive structure. In most lakes, parallel fishing is done along the break line. These areas are often the scatter point where bass begin to disperse into shallow water at the end of the migration route. Break lines are fast-dropping ledges, usually occurring at the same depth along their entire length. The break line may be dramatic or very subtle. There may be only one or a whole series of these geologic stair steps. Once the depth of the break line has been established, follow it using the depth finder. Cast the lure directly in front of you. This puts the lure close to the bass. Use the lure type that gives you the greatest control at the depth you're fishing. Crankbaits are excellent choices on shallow break lines, but plastic worms and jig and pork rind combinations work better in deeper water. On any break line, the best potential spots for bass are called breaks. This can be a tree fallen over the ledge, an indentation, outcropping, or any irregularity. The break affords a sheltered upward passage for bass bound for shallow water. Without some break, the break line will usually not hold bass. At each break, the bass will often pause. When a bass is caught along the break line, mark the area. The break may be holding a school of bass. Bass cling together in small groups of similar-sized fish. If no other fish are caught in the same location, the activity may have spooked the other fish, or you may just have caught a straggler. So far, we've been talking about migration routes that are connected to the shoreline, but migration routes can be grouped into two different classes: on structure and off structure. On structure routes are directly connected to the shoreline, such as the areas we've been fishing. Off structure are islands, humps, underwater bars, and other shallow bottom characteristics that interrupt the floor of the lake. Check the legend on your topo map for the proper way to determine the contours that rise. These off-structure areas provide the same kind of home ranges as shoreline-connected areas do. Bass can use this hump as an alternate route in hot summer months, especially if this cut is deep enough to provide a sanctuary. When surface oxygen levels are low and the sun is directly overhead, which occurs in the warm, dry months, bass can come up here and feed on passing schools of shad and other bait fish. It's deep enough to filter out the sunlight, and the oxygen content will be higher. And unknown to most fishermen, an area like this can support schools of bass that migrate from the drop-off by the channel onto the off structure, feed here, and even spawn. So areas like this can provide a complete home area where bass may never even see the shoreline. Good areas even exist right in the middle of the lake. And there are areas, even on a lake that receives a lot of fishing pressure, where there are schools of bass that rarely, if ever, see a lure.
Basically now we're out in the middle of the lake, and I searched for a hilltop out here, which I was able to find with the depth sounder. The depths were very deep down here, and we finally hit 30 to 40 feet deep, which I know this is a hump out here, and this is where fish are going to be congregated almost all times of the year. I switched off the depth sounder, and now I want to paint a picture of the bottom. So I go to my graph recorder, which I feel is one of the more excellent tools for structure fishing. This is going to be showing the bottom. It will be showing schools of bait fish. And as you can see, as we're going right now, we are going uphill. At least that's the bottom, is going uphill. We are approaching one of our marker buoys here, which we have marked previously. And we can see a lot of shad, a lot of bait fish down here. We start to see some structure, and we're getting up into the 20-foot range. Now what I'm going to do as we approach the shallow, I'm going to put this in the 60-foot depth range. And we'll be able to paint even a little better picture of what's going on in the bottom. The chart recorder really saves you a lot of time searching for bass. It's a valuable tool when you're locating concentrations of bass, especially when the fishing is difficult. One of the saving virtues is that it eliminates a lot of water that isn't holding bass. So you can find concentrations of bass in a relatively short time. When you find good places like this that show fish on the graph, it's a good idea to take out your paper and mark these areas as far as landmarks. The landmarks on the graph paper help me to find this spot again. We've got a point here. We've got a tower over here. We've got an island right here. And an old farmhouse right over here that I can identify with. What I do is I like to save the graph paper. When I'm having trouble finding fish, I can tell what kind of structure is down here, when the fish will be here, and what kind of baits I'm going to fish to catch those bass. This is a good piece of graph paper and an excellent spot to fish. Notice we've got a good number of fish right here. These are little curves. They're thicker on one side, which means these fish are moving a little bit. And when they're moving, the chances are they're feeding, and they're a little bit easier to catch than those ones that may be stationary. Also, we've got some structure down on the bottom. Notice these fish are not hugging the bottom. They're up off the bottom. Sometimes we can use the countdown method to present a lure right down to exactly where those fish are. And if they're feeding, we're going to catch them. Since we're a little more than 30 feet off the top of the submerged island, I want to use a lure that reaches the bottom quickly. Choose a jig that's heavy enough for good line control, such as this 1/2 ounce jig. Also important, a good stiff weed guard that prevents you from getting hung up on the bottom a lot. Make sure the throat of the hook is wide enough so you have a better chance of getting the hook into the fish. Color isn't a major consideration when fishing deep water, as most bright colors turn dull anyway. I prefer black and brown jigs for good all-around fishing. Of course, every time I use a jig, I always use a pork frog. By the way, you can use various color combinations on the frog. Black and brown is a good one, black and black, or brown and brown. The main advantage of a frog is that it adds a buoyancy to the bait as you're fishing deep water, sort of flutters down. A great silhouette, also has a very fleshy feel, a bass has a tendency to pick this bait up and hold it a little bit longer. That silhouette, though, is the thing that really gets them. Remember, when fishing deep water structure, you have a lot of line between that bait and that tip of the rod. That's why I like to use a rod that's good and stout, and at the same time has a sensitive tip which telegraphs even the lightest of taps. Another important consideration is the weight of the line, and I like to use at least 15-pound test. Anything lighter really has too much line stretch, and you're actually at a disadvantage. I've cast well beyond the marker here. As the line sinks, you need to keep the line taut, but not tight. Remember, some of these bass are 10 to 15 feet above the bottom. If one of them takes the lure on the way down, I want to be able to feel it. Once the lure hits bottom, take up the slack and work it along using a pump and drop method. Another way to work this kind of deep, flat-top structure is to move the boat close to the marker. Cast the lure, let the line feed out until it reaches the bottom. Take up the slack and turn the reel handle about 2 turns. This puts the lure about a foot above the bottom. Jig the lure up and down a few times, reel a couple of turns, and continue jigging. This way you can work from the bottom up and get to those bass that may be lingering several feet from the bottom. Like most structure fishermen, I found that deeper structures, like this, hold bass more consistently than the shallower structures. By using the proper tackle based on an understanding of what bass respond to, often you can find structure like this that'll hold bass year-round. The deeper water offers a greater sense of protection and holds bass from day to day and often from season to season.
A good look at this predator will tell you a lot about him. He's short-bodied, muscular, and with a very large mouth. Now, unlike trout, which take hundreds of insects a day, a bass will feed on just a few items or maybe even one item.
Well, as we all know, Harold, with the size of the mouth of the bass, large lures are basically the rule of thumb. You know, what I find really amazing about bass fishing is some of these lures don't really resemble anything in nature. Some of the weirdest looking lures can sometimes be the most effective.
Motion seems to be the key in this bass feeding. A bass has eaten so many different items. They've eaten mice, birds and ducks, all sorts of large insects that have fallen in the water.
So then, Harold, unlike trout fishing, you're concerned mostly with the size of the lure and the action of that lure, not so much trying to match the size, like in trout fishing, matching the size of the hatch and the appearance of the hatch. Basically, we're going to follow the recommendations of the lure manufacturer, and usually 3 or 4 different ways, changes of pace to work that lure so that that motion and that action catches that bass's attention. But what do we do when the water cools down? Let's say it gets down below 50 degrees. How do we catch fish?
What you need to do is slow down your bait, slow down that retrieve, and let it linger around these pieces of structure. You need to look for alternate structures that you normally don't fish. Some of the steeper banks and some of the harder surface drop-offs in. These areas should produce bass at this time.
During warmer months, bass will use more horizontal migration routes along points, offshore humps, and other structure. But in the colder months, bass will often use nearby areas that are more vertical, like cliffs and bluffs. Very often, both structures will connect the same deep water home. This is some of the most challenging fishing of the year. Chart recorders are essential at this time because the bass are often tightly schooled and not as spread out as they are the rest of the year. You must be able to identify the potential sanctuary in the same way that's done in the warmer months. Sanctuaries that are located in meandering